Hello and a warm collisions YYC. Welcome to my guest today, Mr. Jim Dunn. How you doing, Jim?
Good. Good seeing you, buddy.
Hey, man. Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. We finally wrangled it in. We made it happen.
Yeah.
I want to dive right into it. You are the president at Stack Modular. I've had the privilege of getting to know you, getting to work with your company, through our agency, kind of in my other life over there, my non-podcaster life. And I've always threatened to have you on the show. So we finally got you in here. And I'm really curious today to dive in on a bunch of different levels, but let's level set for our audience. What is this? What is a Stack Modular? Let us into the tent, if you will, the modular construction tent, and then we'll start the conversation from there.
What is a Stack Modular? I don't know. It's like saying, what is a Nike?
Well, fair enough.
Yeah, Stack. So we build modular buildings, right? And the buildings are repeatable in footprint. So think to yourself, a hotel, a dorm, multifamily apartment buildings, prisons. So we build buildings like one would build a Lego project.
Okay.
That in itself is probably pretty unique for some of the listeners. But the more unique component of the business is we build them in China and we ship them around the world on what looks like an aircraft carrier. So you're shipping a building across the world in Lego and then you stack it, hence the name, at the final destination. And you should be getting a building in weeks and months, not years. That's the business.
That was it. You've given that description before. How do you build? Is there steel construct because modular comes in many shapes and sizes, and maybe the audience, it's probably something people have heard of, I find, but maybe don't fully understand also.
Yeah, sure. So our particular brand of modular is what would people consider volumetric steel modular construction. So we start with a steel frame. The steel frame is very project dependent. It could be 100 feet long. It could be 10 feet long, all depending on the owner's requirements and the lot size and certainly the end user. And then we furnish it, right? So because we manufacture in China, the home of manufacturing, and where I lived for over a decade, you ultimately want to get the pillows on the beds. You want the forks in the drawers. Project dependent, but why half finish a module and then finish it with furniture out of IKEA when IKEA is making it in China too?
Oh, interesting. Again, things I learned. I didn't know that about you guys. I understood the construction part, and I understood some of the benefits, and we'll talk about that come from a repeatable, consistent, things that can happen on the manufacturing floor that are variables out in the field. I didn't know you guys would basically turnkey it when it comes to a dorm or a hotel in a remote location. You're basically soup to nuts, as they like to say.
Yeah, and even by building code requirements, you need to turn the systems on within the module. So, your air conditioning and heating units have to be working in the factory. Your water lines have to be holding pressure. Your electrical has to turn on and off and confirm that it meets code. So you're invariably being pushed by the code to do a lot in the plant. But because we also manufacture in China, why the heck are you buying your forks on Amazon when you can just get them from us and put them in the shelf?
So from a commissioning perspective, these buildings are pseudo commissioned before they end up on site versus putting all your HVAC together. And that first day you throw the switch, untested, we don't know if it's going to work. We find all the bugs. Most of that gets debugged kind of in the manufacturing environment, which arguably has less variables and is more controls, right?
Yeah, I think all of the guys on the sales side of Stack would argue I should never be in a sales meeting. But the sales pitch would be you're getting a twice verified building by nature of the building code, right? And you're getting a more accurate, I once heard from somebody, the worst place to build a building is on a project site. Especially here in Canada where we got, inclement weather and labor shortages.
You mean trades don't do their best work at -30? Is that what you're implying to?
As a northern Alberta boy, I can tell you quite clearly I was not at my best when it was -40. No.
Yeah, this will air in a little bit, but we just came off that 3-week stretch in, I think, coldest February on record of -20. You drive by any kind of construction site downtown and tarps everywhere, and just the every day is harder than it needs to be because of the talk to me about just even that. The tendency to just keep building the way we've always built. It seems like an industry where there is opportunity for technology and innovation, even the concept of modular. It's not a new concept. Talk to me a little bit about just the industry itself, and maybe are we behind? Are we dragging our heels? Is there, we talk about it on one side, but resistant to actually do new things on the other side?
Yeah, on one hand, my 15 years of doing this and running the business has been the most validating, exciting. I'm kind of a disruptive kind of guy, I think. Like, at least that's what my wife would say. And so to come into an industry that, according to The Economist, since 1947, don't quote me, it might be 1957. It's 80 years. So what's 80 years ago? So let's say 1957. Since 1957, production per hour has gone down in construction. Yes, so we actually produced more per hour 80 years ago than we do today. Imagine our textile industry was like that. 80 years ago, grandma was knitting your sweater, and now you go to H&M and you get 15 kinds of
somebody was using a loom. Someone literally was using a loom. Absolutely.
And look at our food and beverage industry. Like, you were pulling carrots out of your garden 80 years ago, and now you go to Whole Foods and you can have organic purple carrots. So construction has actually gone down. And so one instance, as my father says, what an opportunity, what a market to play in, where, innovation in an industry that needs this. So I love my days. I love what I do. I love what we do. But on the other hand, to decrease in productivity over 80 years, there's systemic issues amongst all party goers inside of that supply chain. Call it the city officials, call it the bureaucrats, call it the general contractors, the subcontractors, the unions. It doesn't matter. But to get to a place where over 80 years and technology has increased and we produce less, that's a tough environment to battle in every day.
I'm so curious. And you are instantly my de facto expert because you're on the other side of the microphone. Talk to me more. And you're right. Everybody is in cahoots to a certain extent because one supports the other. It seems almost implausible when you say it out loud, especially as you line it up to other industries, that if they didn't evolve and didn't fundamentally get more efficient and more cost effective, they were completely disrupted by something else. But yet this is 80 years of a trend. I'm always looking for core, like what's the core issue here? But it feels like there might be a few things going on.
Yeah, I think to look innovation in the eye over 80-year period and effectively say we're going to go the opposite direction, you don't have a single stakeholder that's to blame, right? Because to your point, if you had a single stakeholder that was to blame, that person or that industry or that business sector would have been disrupted.
Yeah.
Like how do you disrupt? Like I was presenting recently at a university in the States, and I quickly asked ChatGPT, how many consultants on a building? And it listed 28. Like we have a project in Vancouver at one point had 4 structural engineering firms on the project.
All looking to bill time, all looking to create value, all looking to do what they do. It's like, I always joke, you send a lawyer a document, it's going to come back with red on it because that's what they do. That you ask them to do it. You're going to get that back. And you put a bunch of firms like that on a project, they're going to crisscross and step on each other. It's just how it's going to happen.
Yeah. And I think, I've done hopefully a lot of learning throughout the life cycle of this building or this project and also my life. And that used to frustrate the hell out of me, right? I'd be angry but there's nothing nefarious about it. Right. It's people trying to provide value as best they can. And it's almost like the government, obviously there's bad examples of government officials being nefarious, but ultimately I think sometimes when you have that many people involved, red tape and bureaucracy just happens.
I like what you said. This is not malicious intent, but the system itself is creating its own noise and its own friction and its own bureaucracy.
Yeah. Like Tyler, let me ask you a question. In all your podcasts, all the agencies and certainly all the companies you've worked with on the marketing side of the world, who sells a product or service that is so needed but can't manage to sell their product or service? We have a housing crisis right now.
I was going to start to point at some of the need. I think we all can agree on the need. Before we get onto that, I'm just curious, how long is modular, just because you're it's been around for a while. Like, I'm going to be blunt. It's not a new concept, but how it's done and how it's advancing. But this is not the benefits of modular have been touted before.
Can I make an argument that I've just created in my head as you asked the question?
Please.
I would argue that modular is older than conventional construction.
Okay. Tell me more.
I wasn't around thousands of years ago. Pardon me. And I certainly wasn't around with my indigenous friends when they were living off the land. But if I'm nomadic and I'm moving from one town to the next? Am I not wrapping up my bungalow
Yep.
or wrapping up my teepee and taking it to the next location and building out my society? I'm not digging holes and pouring foundations. So it's been, I guess the point being a little facetious, it's been around forever,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And why it hasn't shown its value, I think, what are we today? Like we're probably 1.5 to 2% of construction in North America is modular right now.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
All right. Um,
And that's against a fairly large, like that's a massive sector that you just like, 2% is still a number, but the sector itself is huge.
oh, it's trillions, right?
2% modular construction.
And a lot of the construction sector that wouldn't be encompassed in that number will never go modular. Like I don't know how you're going to build an Olympic-sized swimming pool modular, and that's okay. Like I think that people's
Yeah.
education and appreciation for modular needs to happen first, so that they can properly look at what can be done off-site and what can't, and that's not even being done well.
I like the personalization of what you're not saying is that it isn't the blanket answer to everything, but it is the blanket. It is an answer to a lot of things. And how do we start looking at it from an individual opportunity to benefits ratio versus just yes or no? Getting away from this binary conversation.
It's exactly what it is.
So how long has Stack been around? You said 15 years?
I think we might be in, what's 2009? Yeah, almost 16 years now.
Okay. Yep. And we rewind 15 years ago and you look at the barriers, the misconceptions, the challenges, the lift. Has it changed?
Good question. I don't want to get too wordy here, but I think I'd have to answer that question in two parts. I think modular versus stack. So modular, it's a lot easier to get a meeting because people are not educated on modular, but they know what it is. When I started the business,
there's an awareness level of the word.
Yeah. Okay. So the awareness is helpful. I would argue, unfortunately, today there's more noise that's negative. In our instance, the quantity of failures in the modular industry where startup companies hire billion-dollar firms like Tyler's to market themselves and yet have not learned how to build a module, right? There's a lot of
and you and I have talked about those before, which we will not name them because we don't want to give them any more.
No, I've learned that a long time ago. It doesn't help, but a lot of your listeners who know anything about modular probably could rattle off 3 or 4 brands, right?
Yeah.
And so on one hand, people are educated on modular. Unfortunately, some of the education is negative. And so on one hand, it's been easier, and on the one hand, it's been harder.
That's interesting. Those brands that you're talking about, that again, we will rename nameless. I've looked at a lot of them, especially when you and I first met, and they almost came off as tech plays. And there was a whole way they positioned themselves, I think, to raise that funding or to get that money in the door that one set them up for failure. But they were distanced themselves so much from what is the construction sector and what ultimately they needed to do at the end of the day to deliver value, which build something. But they positioned as and fancy brands and amazing video and all the things that made them look shiny. But to your point, they never built F all.
Yeah, and I think we probably would have fallen in the same boat because when I started the business, I'm 42 today, so I was 26, 27, 25, whatever. I'm doing really well in math in this call today. If I had the knowledge or kahunas or background to raise capital, I probably would have. And I think what would have happened is we would have put a bunch of money into marketing, put a bunch of money into sales, and told people who we are on day one and not figured out the product. Unfortunately, or fortunately for Stack, we've never borrowed money. Every single year has been organic growth. And if you look back at those tough times, and those hard years of eating just noodles every day for every meal, you're learning your product. I can wire a house blindfolded, and yet most of our company can. And at the end of the day, we know exactly our costs. We know exactly how to wire it so that it doesn't rattle during transport, that it doesn't crack during transport. And so now is our time where we probably need to start marketing, and that's why we met you and telling the industry who we are. It's the inverse of what the other groups have done. And I think a lot of it has to do with they had capital and we didn't.
Yeah, different motivations, and the lean startup makes very different decisions than sometimes the obnoxiously overfunded startup, which you often see, burn, crash and burn. Misconceptions or challenges you talked about. I appreciate there's more brand awareness or sort of concept awareness of what is modular. We'll get into the red tape and some of the things that hold it back. But what are some of those negative misconceptions that okay, I know, I've heard of modular. I'm curious, but isn't modular mean this? Doesn't modular mean that?
Yeah,
I'm assuming there's a pretty clear laundry list of things that people stack up when you.
It's
sorry,
like level,
pun intended.
No, you're a good one. It's level A, B, and C. Level A, B, and C on educational and naivety towards modular. So you talk to a level A guy who's just he's seen it, he's touched them, she's installed them. Now we're up against the hard stigma of why other brands failed. Like, okay, I unfortunately have to be a mole inside of other companies who failed because I have to defend them or at least explain why they failed. Right?
You mean that broad brush gets painted over you as well in that meeting?
My favorite one is, I walk into a meeting and someone starts bringing up our competitor who failed. And I said, oh, well, that's like Ford having to defend the DeLorean, which I guess that doesn't work anymore because DeLorean came back and raised a bunch of money recently, I heard. But I'll have to find a new analogy. So that education level, those are hard, right? When people are trying to paint the brush of who you are versus your competitor, and the industry failed together on that project, which is not the case. Especially in construction, that one GC does a terrible job or one apartment building is ugly. Do you call all apartment buildings ugly? Do you call all GCs terrible? No. It's so funny to me. And then, the median educated modular researcher, would have a lot to say that, aren't they trailers? Isn't that like mobile park homes?
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, hold on. That is a form of modular, and then the last is the person who knows nothing about modular. And you almost have to discredit that person today in 2025 amongst all this housing crisis documentation and modular talk in the newspapers. If they don't know what modular is, you start judging a book by its cover a bit on that one.
I understand. I guess thinking about ideal customers, like who do you want to be in the room with? Is it someone from the traditional construction industry, or is this someone that's more, I have to get a project done and I don't have biases. Mm-hmm. I want the best outcome. Like who's the kind of right fit for that in terms of their openness to doing things a bit differently, but they're more concerned with the outcome than they are maybe the stories?
You're a great question asker. Has anyone ever told you that?
Yes, once or twice actually. But Jim, I'm happy to hear it again. So don't hold back.
You should really own a podcast. I'm probably not a good answer because, again, that question is such a good one that it depends on the geography, depends on the country, and I'm going to be as polite as I can with this response because I am a Canadian.
Okay.
If I'm looking to sell, educate, or market in Canada, I am probably educating and marketing with the hopes of earning the soonest revenue to a government official.
Okay.
Because our government is driver of innovation in construction, which has its own massive struggles. Is how do you market to a government? How do you get in front of? That
scares me a little bit. Like right? As a marketer, I'm like, ooh, that's a tough one.
Right. Well, just find me a private developer in Canada, which ironically is a remote, shortage labored, high cost of goods country. Tell me a private developer that's gone modular, right? So tell me the governments who have gone modular. It's who we are as peoples in Canada. Our government drives innovation, and not just construction, in so many other areas, right? Mm-hmm. We're a very risk adverse community. So on one hand,
there's a big lineup to be second and third. There's a very short lineup to be first.
There you go. And then inversely, in the States, which is a lot bigger, better market for us. I am first and foremost wanting to meet with the actual developer, because developers in America, Americans, certainly business owners like developers, they want to know what's new. They want to make their performer work better. They want to see what in the world is faster, stronger, better, quicker. And so that it's a different pot and how you stir it depending on what market you're trying to enter.
And I've heard that you're not the first person on the show who's talked about selling to a Canadian customer or selling to the US, where they're like, hell yeah, like we're looking for every edge. We're looking to get ahead. We're willing to take risks, because if we don't, that is a risk in itself. And then we fall behind and lose market share, right? It's a very different motivation cycle. I've heard that
Yeah,
from many
exactly.
people. Like, yeah, we love being Canadian, but the customers we like to deal with are often south of the border because there's a little bit more fire or aggression and to push fear aside, which
Yeah, and
yeah.
risk goes both ways, right? You sell to an American developer, which we do, and the litigious nature of America can bite
You
you in
better
the,
deliver on
the
the
ass.
promise. You better deliver on the promise,
You
right?
know, I could send a billing upside down to someone in Canada and probably be like, "Hey, sorry about that." So there's a pro, and I got to be positive about Canada too.
This is about being honest, Jim. We're trying to speak the truth.
Yeah.
I like to be positive on this show, but I also like to not. I like to be real. Hey, talk to me a little bit about. Obviously, it's unstable, unknown series of events that are happening between Canada, U.S., and obviously, and I really want to get back, and we'll circle back to it too. Maybe before we get into tariffs and all that shenanigans, we'll save that for
Mm.
later. The choice to actually manufacture in China, because that was a choice you made many, many years ago.
Was it a choice or was it out
Mm-hmm.
of naivety and solace and depression?
Well, Jim, only you can
Man,
answer that question, my friend.
man, I was living on the beach in LA. I was an engineer. I just finished university playing sports. Decided not to come back. I had a great job, and I met a girl on the beach.
That all sounds lovely.
Yeah, yeah. To all the listeners, don't do that. Um, yeah, followed her to China. Relationship was short lived. You know, she found a handsome, stronger, bigger guy than me. And in hindsight, man, was that tough. And the phone calls I made back to dad crying but coming from a real strict conservative father who, in hindsight, I'll use it again, was the best dad I could have ever asked for by saying, "Am I allowed to swear?" My
Yeah,
dad
Jim,
swears.
100% you are. This
Okay.
is your brand. The second you swear, I'll be right there with you. But until then, it's off the table.
Dad said, "Fucking figure it out."
Yeah.
And it's probably the best advice I ever got, and I didn't even know it was advice, right? And here you are. And so, I'm trying to find a place to sleep and started making shit in China on my own. And, lucky for us, we made some contacts in Canada, started making things on the Dragon's Den TV show, started
Ah,
making
interesting.
me, you name the product, we made it. And
Okay.
those were all invaluable to one day, being the largest module provider in the world. Like we were working with aluminum, cloth, fabrics, nylons,
Oh, interesting. That's a cool
you
origin story.
know, man, we
And
made
yeah,
children's calendars. We made socks that snap together. We made, you might, we made Swell water bottles, which are now everywhere.
yep. Mhm.
I got horror stories of Swell where we screwed up.
But
But
you were
those
in the trenches
days,
of the manufacturing process on the ground. And when people over here were like, "Oh, we should get that outsourced in China," you were the expat on the ground over there that someone from
yeah.
here could talk to. Oh, interesting. Cool.
And you don't realize at the time, if you've got a semblance of hard work instilled in you from your parents, which I like to think a lot of us prairie boys do,
Mhm.
and you're a little naive, so work ethic plus naivety, and then kind of the no quit attitude. Really, anything was possible at the time from China, and maybe even anything's possible in life. And so we just kind of kept working, and finally stumbled upon, building a shipping container unit. And then one led to two, and then you realize shipping containers themselves are not actually a code, and so you start building your own steel frames, and then
Ah, interesting.
here you are today.
When did you? What was your? When would you? When would you mark the calendar? What that was our first modular build? Because there was probably a lot of intermediate steps. Was there a moment where you look back
Mm-hmm.
and go, "Yeah, we delivered our first modular constructed assembly of some kind to
Yeah,
where, what,
it
and
was
when."
exactly that. It was exactly that. It was a Dragon's Den client.
Okay.
So great company. They're still around today. So here I am bad mouthing all the failures of the industry. Wonderful company out of in Saskatchewan. Went on Dragon's Den and we're building shipping container units on their own. And no different than any other product on the show. We got a call and said, "Hey, listen, can you do that?" And so we started building this shipping container, and it was successful enough to set
Hmm.
up a fury of like this is no more children's calendars.
Okay.
This is where
No more.
this is where
So
we
see, we're
should.
moving from socks with snaps to an
Yeah,
actual.
which are all good ideas, by the way. It
Yep.
just it just happened to be, and I think it has a lot to do with who I was as an individual. Like I'm from rural Alberta. I've known what modular work camps and oil and gas camps
Hmm.
were. I'm an engineer and an architect, so like it kind of scratched that itch a bit. You don't want to really go to university for 5 years and then just focus on socks your whole life. You kind of want to put it to work, right? And so I think just a combination of all that, and my brother-in-law, who wasn't my brother-in-law at the time, was with us in China, and so he had a background in construction. So just if you work your ass off, or as Dad says, just fucking figure it out.
Just figure it out.
You eventually are going to come across something, I believe, that makes sense. And then when you don't take on any debt, you remain nimble, and you can keep working hard and failing.
That first market, thinking about being in China, was Canada. You obviously, Dragon's Den was a Canadian-based show. Was your first customers in Canada, and then US came second?
It was actually Canada first, and then an international project.
Okay. Okay.
And
I jumped a step. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then there's a reason. Like, so, the last kind of part of my story, or at least the Stack story, that maybe a viewer would find interesting is, so 6 years ago, 7 maybe, we sold 50% of the business to a publicly traded general contractor.
Mm-hmm. Based out of Canada, correct? Are they? Yeah, they're Canadian based. That's what I thought. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very large, great company, and with that came immense excitement that Canada is going to boom for us, and we don't even have to worry about the international world. You don't have to worry about the States. Like, Canada is going to be. But I think our partner, as much as us, and if they were on the podcast, I think they'd agree that Canadian business mentality we talked about earlier.
Yeah,
they probably had to learn that too. When you're bringing in a very established, great company, but to bring in innovation inside of Canada is just difficult. And so US was.
Sorry, and that's interesting because that's a trusted legacy construction company that people would look at and go, oh, you'd think there'd be some rub off of like, oh, it just shows you how risk adverse our Canadian market is to go, okay, we know this group, we know they're trusted, they've been around for decades. Ooh, but we're still, that sounds risky. Like, that shows just how risk adverse we are right there in my mind from a branding or an equity or a trust perspective. That still, it wasn't there. It's still, you couldn't bridge that gap.
Yeah, and we don't want to blame all Canadian society and 35 million people for
let's not throw it completely under the bus, but yeah, I hear you.
We had within our partnership, we've made our own mistakes, right? And I'm guilty as the next, but yeah, and so the last stage to the kind of our growth as far as geographical is, I think our partner and I just saw that Canada is a little slower uptake than maybe we would have liked. We're seeing some really, really cool progress in the last 6 or 7 months, knock on wood.
Okay.
But like 3-4 years ago, I said, guys, like, we got to get to the States, the land of, well, I'm sure Trump's got some slogan these days, but and it was
we're going to get to this part of the conversation, Jim. We're just saving it a little bit.
It was a very strategic move
yeah,
to open an office in California. You're diversified in your project sizes, cost types. You can go through the long 3-4 year program in Canada to build and still feed the family by sending stuff around the world, and then you can still make these jobs. So the diversification was naturally born.
Jim, you just wanted to get back to the beach in LA, right?
Listen, there's always you're always looking after yourself too, right? So when thankfully for us, California,
when the opportunity arose, yes, absolutely.
My partner was like, "Yeah, you're right, Jim. Let's go set up an office in Nebraska." Like, no, it was California happens to be a better market, so we're always there.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. Just circling back, even just the mindset around Chinese products, Chinese manufacturing, has that evolved? Are we still pushing that idea uphill? I have my own views and my own thoughts, but you've been in it for many, many years. I'm going to use snapping socks to snap together as my contrast. From you buy socks to snap together, and it comes from China, and it's cheap, it's low quality, it's good enough, we don't care. To now, no, this is actually the best place to build this product, which is this modular output, this modular building. How's that uphill battle been, and how is it 6 months ago to how it is today? Even
let me answer your question with a question. What's it like to buy products in Canada? Can you get shit? Can you get great? Can you get expensive? Can you get cheap?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? I think.
Yep. Touche.
I find it. I'm no. And this may come out in my tone and throughout the next 10, 20, 30 minutes. I am the furthest thing from this woke leftist, and we'll leave it at that. But I do find it shocking how China is the last country, certainly as very, very left-leaning DEI wokeism is apparent. inside of Canada. How China's the last country where we're able to stereotype and say whatever we want about.
Oh, that's interesting. Where everything else, you're right, in the last couple of years has been unanimously brushed as off limits.
Oh my God, if you brush anybody with a paintbrush, holy
Yeah, yeah,
smokes! Or if you talk about a creed, color, race, gender, oh my goodness.
that's true.
But yet,
Yeah, I never thought about
China
it that way.
is
It's a good point.
China is dynamic. China is shit products out of a shit factory. If you want, you got inversely, they're making BMWs and Porsches in China now.
Yeah, yeah.
You got iPhone, who's building their products there since the beginning of time. You've got Phil Knight, whose book on Shoe Dog is phenomenally well written on how to do it right in China.
That is a great book for anybody who's looking for a read. I would give that 5 stars.
It is awesome.
Yeah,
and go give me a book on how to properly get shit manufactured in Canada. It's not there because it's just a weird set of circumstances. And so, my answer usually to the people, 15 years ago, 10 years ago was a little bit education based. Like, no, China's awesome. Like, we make the iPhone. Really? We make the iPhone? Yeah. And now it's a hatred or a visceral like anger towards China, and that was a lot of it's been built up by the Republican administration in the States. And, don't get me wrong, Trudeau has not done any favors to Canada with locking up Huawei's daughter and adding additional tariffs. So he's not helped. The irony, the Democrats and Republicans both have negative rhetoric towards China in the States. So it's one of the few things they agree on these days. So yeah, it's now gone from educating the naive on what China looks like and to kind of turning down the hate knob and the frustration knob, which is a lot harder to do.
When a marketing or a PR message clearly oversteps reality, but it was a joke. You can argue with facts, but it's hard to argue with beliefs.
Yeah, there you go. And I often share too with people, like, you can have, if I were to stereotype you as a Canadian by representing who I think you are by your government, right?
Please, Jim, Jim, don't do that to me. Don't, no.
Yeah, right? Canadians, and I'm not just talking us Albertans, but like Canadians for the most part distance themselves from like that government. That's not who I am. Americans do it too. So why do we?
That's the us and them mindset, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Like, so if you're uncomfortable or don't like the Chinese government, sure, but that doesn't represent the Chinese peoples. No different than here.
I appreciate that. And the brass tacks also, and you and I have chatted about this before, you are there because it allows you to be competitive. It allows you to build an excellent product. So just from a sheer strategy perspective, you wouldn't have stayed manufacturing there if the output wasn't good, because it would have hurt your business potential. Like, you are also made choice legitimately because of the value it provided.
I would start a factory tomorrow on the beach in LA if I could.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And hopefully the irony resonates. Like, why would someone start a factory outside Toronto? Why would someone start a factory outside Vancouver or outside LA? Like, I know a modular guy started a factory in LA, went bankrupt. Someone else took it over, went bankrupt, and now a third guy just took it over. Like, guys,
it's not working.
The Nike shoe is made overseas for a reason. Yeah, it's tough, it's hard, but there's huge advantages. Our labor cost, quite honestly, the work ethic. But also, your supply chain. I remember once we were shipping modules out, and one of our QC guys had grease on his boots, and he walked on the mattress of one of the units, and the mattress was ruined, and the ship was leaving the next day. It's a tough part about our business. Ships leave when they want to leave.
Yeah, yes, they're not going to wait. They're not going to wait for you.
We need. I call someone in the office in Shanghai. I'm like, we need mattresses. I'm at the factory in China. And I'm like, we need mattresses now. Like, 3 of them have been dirtied. Leaves tomorrow. She goes, well, I have. On my internal Stack database, I have 176 factories that can manufacture mattresses by tomorrow. Who do you want me to call?
That's just such a different mindset. I can't even conceive that type of availability and that kind of turnaround. People would laugh here if you just called and, can I get, oh my goodness, the kerfuffle we have to go through to get you through mattresses.
Right. And using the mattress 176 number as an further
totally.
example.
Yeah. It's a representation.
When guys like Tyler or clients of ours, well, yeah, of the 176, you're gonna have a lot of them that are shitty. You're also gonna have a lot of them that are friggin' amazing. It's up to you to
Like
manage
any,
your
like
purchase in China.
to vet your supply chain. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anyone can build, everyone can do both. Obviously, you touched on it, and we kind of pushed it back a little bit because I really wanted to camp out a bit and get an understanding of Chinese manufacturing process and your whys around it. But we have a housing crisis. You can't shake a stick at it without it's mentioned in the media. It's interesting. I had the executive director in from the drop-in center yesterday, and she said very boldly, "Tyler, the solution isn't more drop-in center; it's more housing." She goes,
Yep.
drop-in center, if we're building more drop-in centers, we're missing the whole point of the desired outcome, which is to get people through the drop-in center as a temporary solution into houses. She's like, that should be every mandate for everyone in Canada. It's if we build more drop-in centers, we're missing the plot. And I thought it was very well articulated.
Housing, the statistics on housing are just shocking. What it does as a positive, what it does for quality of life, what it does for opportunity of wealth, what it does for dysfunctional homes. It's unbelievable.
Stability, mental health, family, like check all the boxes of what you get when you've got a sense of comfort and you've got a sense of security and a sense of safety in your life.
I am on a project right now. Well, the company is. I'm not smart enough to be on jobs anymore. It's the tallest Canadian modular tower for a government shall be unnamed on the top on this call.
Yep.
We're on year 4. It's 115-ish, fully furnished kitchenettes, beds, living, full nice apartments for Indigenous housing. So what an opportunity, what a need. And we're in year 4, maybe 5 from conception to haven't dug a hole yet. During those same years, we will have built hundreds, thousands of modules elsewhere in the world while that process takes place.
And this is not the way we've done it, so we have to change. We're so vested that, maybe at one tier somebody says, yeah, we're doing this. But then as soon as you get down to the levels of bureaucracy underneath, like I'm just trying to understand how to even unpack that.
Well,
without flipping the table over.
No, you can be here for 30 hours because you have the systemics. You have to talk about each stakeholder and call it 30, from permit official to developer to the bank to the architect, right? Each one of them is contributing to red tape, bureaucracy, and almost backwards thinking with respect to modular, right? And so to unpack it is just and that's, I think, the struggle at Stack, if you will, and it will probably be forever. And when I retire, is you've got so many stakeholders that have to agree on a direction. If I sell you an iPhone, I just need one consumer to say, I want to go iPhone, I want to go Apple. I've got 30 plus entities that work in silos, right? Tell me another manufactured good, from those handsome headset to that great hair gel you used this morning to those photographs behind you. Tell me another manufactured good where the manufacturer is not also designing their own good. Elon designs his cars, manufactures his cars. The headphone guy designs his headphones. I've got 30 plus people designing a building that I'm supposed to then go make in a plan.
That all have similar but misaligned agendas. And this isn't, you made the comment earlier about, we'd love to distance ourselves from government, but a net new government isn't going to change this paradigm. Like, what would it take to change it? Jim, I'm giving you the magic modular wand. So no, and let's not even call it the modular wand. Let's call it we have a need to house people. And there's a magic wand that allows us to house people in a more effective, I'm just be blunt, faster way. What would have to happen in your mind? Like, how do we blow it up to get different?
I'm not allowed to give the answer because I got in trouble last podcast I did for the answer. The answer is an apocalypse. No, I'm going to get in trouble.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, but
if it's not an apocalypse,
if not that, then what's next? Thermonuclear war. What next? Mm-hmm.
My solution to the Canadian peoples, if you want to solve the housing crisis, demand your government create a new channel called rapid buildings. In other words, if you're a developer who, for some reason, Canadians and certainly politicians have decided to make the enemy. Developers don't deserve to be the enemy, but if they're the enemy, then they can go through the permit program. They can work with the 30 stakeholders. They can develop the building and get a permit in 4 years. Sure, make them go through those. But if someone's coming to the table to provide housing solutions, certainly to the affordable marketplace, there should be another channel. And that's the only solution I can possibly think of because I've seen it work around the world where in this channel, it's not the typical contract, it's a different contract. It's not the typical design periods, it's a different design period. It's not the typical permit process. And so now all of a sudden you just start from scratch on this new building channel. Call it rapid building permit program, whatever. And then all of a sudden you're going to get your housing on the ground, and it has to meet code. There's no cheat here. It's just call it fast tracked. You know,
but I can see immediately all the incumbents are going to be resistant because that's disruptive. That's them losing work. That's, you know, because at the absence of innovation, I'm just going to hoard my opportunities and look at it from a pure scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset. And ultimately it's that unhoused Canadian citizen of every shape, color, size, gender, all the things that is kind of getting screwed at the end of that story.
You've got it.
Just to paraphrase my own words on top of that. Oh, Jim, I kind of want to flip the table a little bit, Jim. A little bit, I do.
Yeah. Well.
You're like, Tyler, don't even get. Well, we are started on it. So interesting. But what I love, Alto, is, and it's a question you've kind of already indirectly answered, where in other parts of the world can we look for inspiration where they're getting this right? Is it south of the border, or is it more internationally where you're seeing some of this? Hey, stop being our own worst enemy here.
Yeah, like I have reached out to, and our people have reached out to pretty much every government entity, certainly private enterprise inside of Canada, and said, listen, I know everyone's perspective is unique and everyone thinks their perspective is the best, but like we build buildings in Vanuatu, we build buildings in Africa, we build buildings in Australia, you know, United States. Everyone has kind of a different ability to get buildings built and executed, some far better than others, but why can't we at Stack, who have this little vantage point of building buildings all around the world, why can't we help educate? Rising tides raise all ships. If you don't want to use our modules, fine. I don't mind the guy out of Toronto making millions. Great.
Well, to your point earlier, the size of the market is so big. Having a bit, if we make this better for everybody, there will be more opportunity for everybody. Like not to be kumbaya over here. I'm still a capitalist at the end of the day. We need to make money. But if we're getting in our own way so bad, it's hurting everybody. Then we got to look at that, right? Mm-hmm.
Tyler, I got a LinkedIn post probably a year ago from a major mayor, a Canadian city, capital city for that matter, from a mayor of a. She LinkedIn me. I already now people are going to research who she is. And she says to me, Jim, we have a housing crisis. It's major. We all agree. How can we get modular to solve this? I said, I'm here for you. We build buildings around the world. I can share lessons learned from around the world that others are doing. She responds, great. Do you have an availability to meet in 9 months from now? Do you have availability to meet
I pull my hair out.
And it wasn't, hey, I'm busy. It was, I didn't even know how to respond.
Sometimes I feel when I'm booking 3 weeks out for a podcast, I feel like it's silly to say, could you book out at the middle of March? 9 months is a new level. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's representative of the pace of change and the pace of what's even, and that's somebody like, you know, the words that were used were very motivated and I would take as time sensitive, yet 9 months doesn't, that's a misalignment right out of the gate. That's a roll your eyes. That's a roll your eyes message.
Yeah. And my wife calms me down, right? Like I'm getting better every day with 3 daughters and a loving wife, but you know, I used to just fly off the rocker, tip the table, like, ooh, you know, but I also came from China after a decade where like shit happens so fast. You know, we want to build a module. We're done with module in 2 weeks. Out the door. I want to meet a flooring guy. I'm meeting 3 flooring guys the next morning. You're working Saturday, and so there's a lot of personality as a business owner and leader that trickles down into your peoples. So we have to remove that frustration and learn how to cut through the red tape without being angry and frustrated and do it in a calm,
of course,
delivered manner or move on.
Yeah. It's unfortunately,
you know, or you just say,
yeah.
And that's where we're at today. And I hate to say this to my country, but like someone picks up the phone and wants a 10-story building in Vancouver. I don't know if they're getting a call back.
That's sad state of affairs. It's kind of the playbook for a downfall of an empire, right? If I can use the word empire pretty loosely there, but when you get so much bureaucracy and it's I don't know, I'm reading out, you know, it's Atlas Shrugged. It's all those like we've broken innovation under our own levels of bureaucracy, and the people that actually get shit done decided to go somewhere else and live on an island somewhere. But literally, I haven't quoted Atlas Shrugged in a podcast for a while.
Yeah.
And we got to get into it. Tariffs. the US, Canada, China right now. I was talking to someone the other day. They're a major supplier for manufacturing companies in Canada. Wajax, I'll bring them up. They're one of the largest. I think they're 5 years older than Canada. They've been around since the 1850s. And I was talking to the CEO. He's a friend of mine. I had him on the show, and he said, "Yeah, we just had our first products land in Canada that came through the US from China, and our prices went up 10%." He goes, that's a real thing, and that's first shot across the bow on that. How are you seeing that all play out, or how are you factoring that into your playbook on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I was saying to a friend of mine yesterday, I'm going to take the bar, and the amount of lawyers we've spent money on, and but keep in mind, we've been in a tariff, like, not to be mean here, but I got a little smirk on my face when tariffs were said right now, because we've been dealing with this since Trump's first inauguration 7.5 years ago. Section 301 tariffs against China. I've had 25% for 8 years into America, and so now everyone else has to deal with it. It's like,
I appreciate that. That's a justifiable smirk.
So we've had 25% plus the natural tariff, which has always been in play. I think the quick way to answer all these is hopefully the listener realizes that a tariff only goes to the consumer. It only affects the consumer, right? I may lower my margin a bit, but like at the end of the day, I'm pretty comfortable on our margin. It pays our bills and makes us who we need to be. So, I only have a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if I'm got 25%, then I'm going to sell it for 25% higher, or the client's going to buy 25% less housing, or the client's going to pay the 25% more and charge more rent to the renter.
Which ultimately just feels like life costs more, inflation. It's just another way of running it through to ultimately the consumer suffers.
All it is a wonderful cash flow mechanism for government, right? Yeah. So now when I'm bringing it onto the shores, Canada or US, government gets a huge stipend of a tariff, and then the end user named Tyler who's renting an apartment, his apartment fees are 25 in our business is 25% higher because the developers make money. So it's just a tax.
Yeah.
That's Section 301, and then Trump put another 10% on Section 301. So we actually have 35% now.
And it's good to remind people of that this is on top of something that's already been in place from the original Trump playbook.
Hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Well, hundreds of years tariffs have been around, right? I think it goes back to like the Austrians and Germans trading chickens.
Yes.
and I think the playbook shows that even since the Austrians trading chickens, maybe Germans, every single tariff has eventually been dropped because they don't work. Every single one in the history of humanity. I think it's a statistic that bad. And so we're 35 coming into America right now. And now Trump's administration is threatening Section 232 tariffs, which is against steel and aluminum and the byproduct of. So this is the first time in my career, actually I think it's the first time in hundreds of years, where people they're looking to tax not the end good. So I don't pay tariffs. Our user doesn't pay tariffs on beds, on steel, on curtains. They pay it on the end use. So when Apple brings a phone in, you're paying it on a mobile device. You're not paying it on the glass, on the microchip. You're paying on the end use.
Yeah.
What Section 232 is trying to do is make you break down your byproducts, and you're going to pay tariff on just the steel and aluminum components also within your product.
Interesting, because
that's why he's postponed it.
Yeah.
That's why he's postponed it, because the paperwork and the managing of that program, from a tax position to Apple probably has their supply chain down pat. Do you tell another importer or exporter what percentage of that is steel? Defend it. Hey, washing machine guy, what percentage of your washing machine is steel? Well, I don't really want to open my books and show you. Okay, well, you have to now. That's why it's been postponed to Section 232. And then, the battling across borders from Canada, US to Mexico, all the way to China it's unhealthy for everybody.
Yeah. And it's a series of tactics and what impacts it will have in the long run. But in the short term, it creates instability. It creates risk in the business world, and people tend to constrain under, I don't know. So I'll do, doing nothing always seems like the right choice when you're feeling unsure. Mm-hmm.
Well, especially as Canadians, right? We circle back and feeling on ourselves here. Like, we are a very laissez-faire kind of peak-like society where it's like, we'll get through it. It's fine. Okay, it's fine. Let's vote Trudeau in again. Okay, it's fine. But guys, like,
Jim, let's hope we don't do that again. But anyways.
Oh, dude,
yeah.
Well, we vote in parties in Canada, and not leaders. And having lived back in Canada since COVID, I'd be shocked if this country I once loved doesn't vote Liberal again.
I know. I guess hope's not a strategy, and right now I may be trading in a little bit.
In a matter of 3 or 4 weeks, we went from talking about how bad it's been to like, oh, maybe Carney has an answer. Dude, the Liberal Party is the Liberal Party. Here we go, Jim.
Yeah, Jim, I'm with you. I'm with you on this one.
Dude, what's the party got to do to lose votes? Jeepers.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, again, hope was not a strategy.
I live in Northbound. Our westbound to Squamish region just voted Green Party in the provincial election. Green. That's like you move like 4 stages right to get even quasi-conservative. How do you convert those guys by next year's election?
Yeah, fair enough. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds, but it does play a huge role in terms of, and I like what you said about the laissez-faire attitude. I saw stats the other day, and I got to go look it up so I get it right. But if dropping interprovincial barriers from a trade perspective can almost offset what could be the impact of tariffs with the U.S. And don't waste a good crisis. Are we going to get off our laissez-faire asses a little bit to actually make some of the changes that maybe this is a catalyst for? I can only hope, but again, hope's not a strategy.
Well, desperation breeds innovation, right? Whether it's My Little Story or These Times, I hope people are picking up magazines and reading real news on what this is going to do to them so that we make the right decisions. But hopefully, rather than hoping, maybe they have to start reading and have to start thinking. But yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be a little biased here, but Trump is not a friend of Canada's right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know where Canada stands because we don't have leadership. Certainly not a friend of Mexico's right now. Maybe this is a chance for Canada and China to work on their relations.
That's an interesting concept. Yep. Well, it's again, necessity is the mother of all, like you said. It forces you to look at different aspects. And I think, we're not going to get into, hey, what are all the things that Canada can do to diversify its customer base, not being only one customer. And that's an easy oversimplified way to say it. But there's a lot of things I think we could do to set ourselves up for not being maybe such negatively impacted. And I know those are decisions that get made today that have impact, 3 to 5 years from now. But what's the old joke? When's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. But if not then, how about today?
Yeah, right. Or we could also just stop debating all issues with America, China, and Mexico, and we could just go pull oil and gas out of the ground again.
And make ourselves actually very self-reliant, which we can be. I know. Well, Jim, I think we've really simplified it down at the end of the day. So it's 5 years from now. Where do you see the modular industry?
Certainly larger percentage-wise on the desperation that we've had in crisis. Housing crisis. What do you think? Newspapers for 3 years, 4 years.
It just becomes a series of words now with not a lot of meaning behind it to the average person. Right?
Yeah. So I do think solutions are going to be fast approaching. I do think we're going to convince some governments here on this fast approach. If you can prove it for, I think it's going to happen. So I do think it's a larger percentage of the marketplace. I think as far as staff is concerned, more vertical integration, right? So here this whole podcast is being a little whiny wimp. And architects design on their own and government officials. Well, go become be a designer of your own building. Just, our plan is to develop our own building. Why go convince a government or a private developer to go modular when you should just
because if you can't beat them, replace them, not join them. Change the model, right?
I'll just go outside of now. I'm just really relying on permits, right? If I'm a developer, I'm boring on my own, using my own capital, I'm designing my own building. There you go. And I'll go house the people.
They often, what is it? I forget the exact saying or whose it is, but the fastest track to innovation is actually just simply offering something better. Like people will move to something better if it can be easily and demonstrated. And if that means, like you said, removing some of if this is the mindset and I'm not going to change that, then great. I'm going to figure out my own way to do it. And easy to say in a podcast, but I appreciate your thinking around that.
Yeah.
Jim, I believe you have to go pick up your mom from the airport. So I think that's fair to throw that in here at the end, saying, I got to get you off this line because no one wants to leave their mom flying in from Northern Alberta, leaving the deep freeze to head to LA and leave her waiting at LAX on a Friday afternoon. That's a chaos zone for sure.
Lucky for her, I'm in Vancouver right now. So
okay, for sure. I was playing that. I've flown in and out of LAX enough to think like, man, he's got to get to the airport. That's not going to be an easy task. Vancouver can have its own traffic issues, but not in you can't compare that to LA. That's a whole other caliber. Jim,
awesome, man.
Thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for the chat. Thanks for your candor. I loved it.
No, thank you, man. Apologies if it wasn't sooner. And I got to tip my hat is tipped to our VP of sales and marketing there, Matt Clayton. He's like, "You've got to get on a podcast with Tyler. He's a good shit." I'm like, fine.
I like Matt. We're gonna give Matt. We're gonna speak. We're gonna speak finally of Matt on air. Matt, we'll give you 5 stars, buddy. No, he sent me some thoughts. He was very motivated for you and I to chat. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Stack Modular. Check it out online. Jim, if someone wants to reach out to you and have a chat, because I know you love to talk about this, and you're a very good source of truth. LinkedIn. What's your preference? Is that a platform you like?
Yeah, I would say, I think it's, I got a basic name. It's only 7 letters, but, if you look up Stack Modular and Jim Dunn, I think ultimately LinkedIn, I'm trying to, again, aforementioned Matt is making me get better on LinkedIn. So I'll be responsive.
Yes, we always need someone pushing us, but the busy CEO, get out there and talk to people. But I love the conversation. I love your passion. I love what you're doing for the space. And I look forward to a continued relationship. Thanks, my friend.
Thanks, buddy. Continue.